So this video is really to introduce some of the basics, functions of SketchUp and just kind of how to get a hang of some of the tools that are in there. So right off the bat, our welcome screen for SketchUp is kind of similar to our welcome screen from AutoCAD. It'll have all of the files that you've worked on recently, as well as then some basic templates to work from. So we're just going to work out of this architectural inches template. Go ahead and click on that. It might be in a different area on your screen just because I have it hearted. And then we can launch SketchUp. Now, the other thing I'd recommend, let's just give it a second to load. Or 100 seconds to load. There we go. You can see here that in my version of SketchUp, I've got a couple of different toolbars set up in here. So I'd recommend having some of these toolbars that I like to use as well. So to adjust your toolbars, you're going to want to go into the View tab up at the top and then click on Toolbars. And then I'm just going to reset mine to kind of look like yours. So usually you're just only going to start with what's called the Getting Started set. I usually would prefer the large tool set to be open just to have a couple of more buttons and functions to work from. As well as then I'll usually open up our styles toolbar and our views toolbar as well in there. And you can move these around or along, but essentially these can help you just quickly change from different visual styles, kind of similar to Revit once we get into Revit. And then this will help us just easily snap to some orthographic views in there. There's a lot of other toolbars in here that you can use. And of course, too, there's extensions that we can put in for even more tools. But getting started, these are 3 good ones to have. So I'm just going to close out of here. Now, in SketchUp, whenever we're trying to navigate around, we've got our 3 axes here, which essentially are our X, Y, and Z axes, or our width, our depth, and our height. So whenever we're drawing, we always want to kind of take note of these 3 colors and see if we're getting some inferences, is what they're often referred to as, of just making sure that we're staying on those axes. SketchUp also will typically come with a person in here, and that person is then just going to help give a sense of scale for something. So just right off the bat, just to get an idea of how the software kind of works, is let's draw in just a couple of random rectangles and then we'll go through and delete them. So to draw a rectangle, you can either use the keyboard shortcut R, and once you just type R, you'll see your cursor change to that rectangle tool, or it's this button right here. I'm just going to draw a rectangle here, another one, random one here, and then like another one here. So essentially what SketchUp exists of at the moment now, and to get out of the rectangle tool, I'm just going to hit the space bar to make my cursor back into a regular cursor, is just edges and surfaces. And kind of everything within this software is just a basic either an edge or surface or a combination of edges to make a surface in there. And once you have surfaces made, you then can pull them or extrude them up using the push-pull tool. So the push-pull tool is keyboard shortcut P, or this button right here, and then we can click on a surface and we can extrude it or pull it up. And we can even then alter surfaces after the fact to pull them and move them around. So we can kind of just go and pull some of these up and make some changes to them in there. And again, to get out of any tool, it would be the space bar to just make your cursor back into that selection tool. You can also come up here and you can click on this to go back into the selection tool, but space bar is typically going to be easier. Now to move around in the software, you can just use your scroll wheel on your mouse to zoom in and out. And it is going to be context sensitive. So it's going to zoom in based on where you have your cursor. Now, if you want to move around 3-dimensionally, if you click and hold the scroll wheel like a button, you'll see your cursor switches to an orbit mode and you can orbit around 3-dimensionally. And additionally, then if we want to pan, like we're in AutoCAD, you'll hold the Shift key and the scroll wheel. So when you hold the Shift key and then click the scroll wheel like a button, you can then pan or move yourself around. Now, if you don't have access to a mouse, and again, I highly recommend using a mouse in this software, but you do have access to those tools here. So we can click on orbit and orbit around, and we can click on the, I believe this is the pan tool, yeah, the pan tool, and we can pan around. And you can even then use the zoom tool to click and then drag your zoom, but the scroll wheel again makes that a heck of a lot easier. I'll hit the space bar to get out of there. So now that we can navigate around a little bit, let's just go through and delete all of these objects just to start off with a completely fresh drawing. So you can either select faces or edges individually and then use the delete key on your keyboard to erase them, or I'll Control Z to undo that. So I'll use Control Z to just undo. If while in this selection tool, so again, hitting the space bar, if you click off in the middle of nowhere, you get these selection sets that you can drag similar to AutoCAD. So if I click and drag towards the right, I get this window, versus if I click and drag towards the left, I get this dashed one, which is like a cross selection. So just like with AutoCAD, clicking and dragging with a window selection, it's only going to select things that are entirely inside, versus with the cross, it just kind of barely has to touch. So I'm just going to pan over a little bit and just draw a big selection window around all three of those boxes and then hit the delete key just to get rid of them. And then we're going to start making our little kind of playground that we're going to make for this demo in here. So the first thing I'm going to do is just draw a rectangle in here, and I'll use dimensions this time around to draw a rectangle. Now you don't have to use the same dimensions I do in this whole project. We are just kind of going to play around a little bit with some of these settings, but I'll use the keyboard shortcut R to start the rectangle tool. I'm going to click somewhere to start and see how my rectangle's blue. That means I'm drawing it flat, and I'm going to type 4 feet, comma, 4 feet. Enter. Now, typically in previous versions of SketchUp, there was a measurement bar here, but it's not here at the moment, but we can put that in. So I'm going to go into the View, Toolbars, and then I'm going to check off measurements so that way I can see when I'm typing in measurements in there. So I'll just undo that rectangle and I'll show it again real quick. So I'm still in the rectangle tool. And then as I'm moving, you can see here in measurements, those numbers change, and I'm going to do 4 foot, comma, 4 foot, enter. And then I'm just going to use the push-pull tool to pull this rectangle up about 4 inches. So I'll do keyboard shortcut P, I'll click on that square, I'll go up, and then I'm just going to type 4 inches, enter in there. Then I'm going to split it into 2 pieces so I can put like a ridge up at the top. So I'm going to use the line tool, which is keyboard shortcut L, or this button up here. And I'm going to find the middle, which it'll kind of infer or show me where the middle is. And I'm just going to draw a line from middle to middle. And again, I'm keeping myself on that green axis as I do this. Then I'm going to use push-pull again to just move, or actually I'll use the move tool instead of push-pull, excuse me, to move that edge up 1 foot. So I'm going to do keyboard shortcut M for move, or this button here. I'm going to take this edge and I'm just going to move it straight up on that blue axis 1 foot. Enter. Now, anytime we kind of finish making a shape, we should always want to group it or make it into a component. So I'm going to hit the space bar to go back into the selection tool, and to select this entire form, I'm going to triple click on it. So if I click once, I can click on that just single edge. If I double click, it'll highlight the edge in the face. And if I triple click on it, it'll highlight all of the edges and all of the faces on that object. So I'm going to triple click so I get everything. and then I'll right click on the object and I'm going to make it into a group. When I make it a group, we'll see this bounding box kind of come on it, and then all of those faces will go away unless I went in to edit that group, and we'll look at that later. I'm then going to move this object up 8 feet into the air. So I'm going to use the move tool again, which is keyboard shortcut M. I'll click on one of the edges. And again, I'm looking for that blue inference that I'm on that blue axis, and I'm going to go up 8 feet. Enter. And I'll zoom out so we can see a bit more in there. The next thing I'm going to do is make the pillars for my playground in here. So for each of my pillars, I'm going to orbit around by clicking and holding on my scroll wheel to kind of look at this object from underneath. And I'm going to make another rectangle again, this time just on this object's corner. So I'll do keyboard shortcut R for rectangle. I'm going to go right onto its corner. I'm going to move my cursor until I get a blue rectangle, and I'm going to do 4 inches, comma, 4 inches. Enter. Then I'm going to pull that down using push-pull 8 feet. So I'm going to keyboard shortcut P, click on that square, and I'm going to go down 8 feet. And then I'm going to make it into a component instead of making it into a group, because they work a little differently. The rule of thumb is anything you're going to make copies of, you should make components. Anything that's just going to be a singular object, you can make it into a group. So I'll hit the space bar after I've pulled it to go back into the selection tool. I'm going to triple click on it and then right click, make it a component. And I'll call mine pillar because that's what it's going to be. So once I've made it into that component, I now can make copies of it. So whenever we're going to make a copy of it, we always want to think about too where we're grabbing something by. But the copy tool is actually located within the move tool. So I'm going to start the move tool. I'm going to click on my object and then I'm going to do keyboard shortcut M to move it. I'm going to move it from this corner to here. So I'm going to click on that corner of my object, and while I'm in the move tool, I'm going to click on the control key and it's going to switch me over to the copy tool. Then I'm going to orbit myself around with my scroll wheel. I'll click on this side, hit the control key, and then, well, it seems like I was making a copy of this one. It's okay, I just hit escape a bunch of times. So let's click on this corner, hit the control key, and then we can make our copy of it. And then orbit around to this side, click on that corner, tap the control key, and then we can make 4 copies of it in there. Our next step is we're going to add a base to each of these. And so to do that, we can really just add a base to each one of our pillars. And because they're components, they'll edit all 4 at once since we've made them into copies. So I'm going to hit the space bar to get out of the move tool. I'm going to double click on one of these pillars, and it doesn't really matter which one I pick. So if I double click on it, we can see that everything else in my drawing is kind of grayed out and there's this bounding box around my object, and I can double click to get out of it. So essentially by double clicking on it, I'm going in this pillar to edit it. I'm just going to bring a base out of my object. So I'm going to kind of orbit around to the looking at the bottom of it, and I'm going to use my offset tool, which is keyboard shortcut F. I'm going to click on this face and move my cursor out. And I'm just going to go out 1 inch. And you can see that it's put that face on all 4 of these. I'm going to orbit back up to look at it from above. And then I'm going to use the push-pull tool to pull that up 1 foot. Enter. I'll hit the space bar to get out of the push-pull command, and then I'll double-click outside of it, or outside of that pillar to get out of editing it. So since it was a component, it made that copy on all 4 of those edges versus it being a group in there. Our next step is we're going to add just a platform to our playground, and we're going to do that through a lot of inferences so that this way we won't have to take a lot of measurements. So I'm just going to draw a random rectangle using the keyboard shortcut R, and I'm just going to put it flat on the ground, and I'm not even really going to pay attention to its size all that much in there. Then I'm going to pull it up 2 inches. So I'm going to use push-pull, keyboard shortcut P. I'm going to bring it up 2 inches, enter, and then I'm going to make it into a group. So I'm going to hit the space bar to go back into my selection tool, and then triple click on that platform, right click, make it a group. Then I'm going to move it up on the blue axis about 30 inches. So I'm going to use my move tool, which is keyboard shortcut M, click on the corner up on my blue axis, 30 inches, enter. So now it is floating there. Afterwards, I'm going to double click on it, and I'm going to use push-pull to pull these faces to these pillars in there. So I'll hit my space bar to get out of the move tool. I'm going to double click inside of the platform to edit it. And then I'm going to use push-pull, which is keyboard shortcut P, to click on the faces. And I can use some inferences to bring these edges to all of the faces of the pillars. So I can click on that face, and then I can click on the pillar to bring it right to those faces in there. This one I'll bring out a little bit more. I'm going to bring it to the outside face of it. To fix these ones, what I'm going to do is use either the line tool or the rectangle tool to then take this face and only bring just this inner part out. I can't bring this whole thing through because it'll clip through it in there. So I'm going to start the line tool, which is keyboard shortcut L, and I'm going to draw a line from my intersection straight down on that edge, and I'll orbit around to the other side and do the same thing. And then I'll use push-pull to bring just that part of my platform to my face. I could also, on this side, I could use the rectangle tool instead of the line tool. So keyboard shortcut R to go from intersection to, let's see where intersection is. I want to make sure I'm on the right piece. And then push-pull just that face out for it. Then once I've got my platform all done, I'll hit my space bar and I'll double click outside of the group to end editing that group for it. Next, we'll talk about some arcs and circles, as well as guidelines. So we're going to use the tape measure tool to start making some guidelines. So the tape measure tool is keyboard shortcut T, or this button here in your toolbar. And what we can do with the tape measure tool is we can click on edges to make new inferences from that edge. So I'm going to click on the edge of my platform, and on my red axis, or even I guess my green one, just as long as I'm getting a flat inference, I'm going to bring this edge in 1 inch. And then I'm going to click on the platform edge again, and I'm going to bring in 3 inches. This way, I can use it to make a 2-inch wide rectangle kind of centered on here. So I'll use my rectangle tool, keyboard shortcut R, to go from edge, and let me orbit around to intersection and making sure I'm getting that blue rectangle. and then I'll use the push-pull tool to pull it up an amount. It's not really all going to matter too much. So I just clicked just to pull it up to a height in there. Next, I'm going to use the 3-point arc tool just so I can put a curve on this face here. So we have a few different arc tools, but we're going to use 3-point arc, which is right here. And I'm going to go from the corner of my face here, and I orbited around just to make sure I was going to that corner, and it looks like it went to that edge, unfortunately. So I'm going to hit escape. There we go. Now it seems I'm flat on this face. Let's see if we can do it again. None of these are doing what I want. Let me hit escape 100 times. See if I could go from this object's face to here, and then I want them to kind of flatten a bit. Let's see a 2-point arc instead of a 3-point, and maybe that's what we want. So again, I'm flat on this face. I'm flat on this face. There we go. So I actually wanted a 2-point instead of a 3-point. I'll click. Just making sure though that I was on this object's face instead of on like the edge of one of these pillars. And then I'll use push-pull, keyboard shortcut P, just to get rid of that top. And we'll see that I can only bring it 2 inches. So I'm looking for that inference that I'm on that face in there. Once I have my face here, we'll also do some practicing with just the circle tool and cutting shapes out only to the other side of that face in there. So we're going to use circle, which is this tool right here. I'm just going to draw a couple of random circle shapes. So again, looking for those inferences that I am on the face. And then we'll use push-pull, which is keyboard shortcut P, and looking for that blue on face, just to cut these out as holes. Now, sometimes it will let you pull things further, which is why we're looking for that blue on face inference. And once we have our holes in there, we are going to want to make this into a group. So let's hit the space bar, triple click on this object, and then right click, make it a group. There. Next, on the other side, we will make our bars in here. So we'll use the circle tool to start our bars. So circle is keyboard shortcut C, or this button here. And to perfectly center this circle on one of the pillars, what I'm going to do is hover on that point for a moment, and then as I move up, it'll kind of infer to the middle in there. And I'm going to click somewhere to start one of my bars, and then I'll give it a radius of 1 inch. Enter. I'll use push-pull to pull it across to the other side there. So keyboard shortcut P, click on that bar, and I'll pull it to my other side. Then I'm going to make it into a component since I'm going to make copies of it later. So I'll hit my space bar. I'm going to triple click on this bar and then right click, make it a component, and I'll call mine bar for it. Now, we could make several copies of it, and you can even type distances for copies. But what we're going to do is try to work with the array tool, which sometimes is a little hard to figure out while you're working within it. So if we mess up, we can always just Control Z to undo and then try again. So while I have this bar selected, I'm going to start my Move tool with keyboard shortcut M. I'll click somewhere to start it. and then I'll hit the control key once to make a copy. I'll move my cursor up and click where I want my copy to go. And while I'm still in this copy tool, I'm going to type 5x, enter. And then it made 5 copies for it. Now, sometimes if you've clicked somewhere else accidentally while making your copies, you can't make these changes to it. So while I'm still in this copy tool, I could change it to 3x, enter, and then I've made 3 copies of it. Or I could do 4x, enter. But once I click somewhere else, I'm out of that copy tool. So if your array doesn't work, you can always just do Control Z to undo, and then start the Move tool again with keyboard shortcut M, and try again. So we click on our object, we tap the Control key to go into copy, we click to place our copy, and then we say how many copies we want. So I'll do 4x. But if you have 5x or 6x, that's totally fine. And then once we're all done, we will hit the space bar to end the command for it. Next, we're going to make some steps for our playground here. So let's orbit and pan around. So we're looking where we can sort of put our steps in there. I'm going to create a rectangle, and I'll start it looking for, in my case, just based off where I am, this feedback that I'm on. The green face, you might get a red triangle or red rectangle, but we're always looking for this feedback here. I'll make it a certain size, and then I'm going to push pull to pull it out 4 feet. Enter, and then I'm going to pull it down to the bottom of the pillars. This dude's a little bit in my way, but I'll leave him there for now. I'm for it. Then I'm going to use my tape measure tool, keyboard shortcut T, to make a guide that comes out 12 inches and a guide that goes down 8 inches. I'm going to then make steps that go to the ground by using the line tool, keyboard shortcut L, to go from edge of my playground, and then another guide that goes straight down on my blue axis. I'll hit my space bar to go into my selection tool, and I'm going to make copies of these 2 lines or 2 edges in here. So I'm going to click 1, and I'm going to hold the Shift key to click on that other line that I've made, so that way I can select both of them. And then I'm going to use the Move tool to grab by the corner. And once I start to grab it, it wants to kind of move the whole shape. But once I tap the Control key for copy, it'll stop moving it. So I'm going to move to there. And then make another copy, tap the Control key to move to the ground. Make another move, Control key to move to the ground. And then I can use push-pull, keyboard shortcut P, to grab this face and just pull all the way through to end it. Once I've got my steps made, I'll hit the space bar. I'm going to triple click on my stairs and make them into a group. Now, if your guides start to get a little bit in the way, or there start to be kind of too many guides around, what you can do is in your, I want to say edit tab. Nope, it's in the, it is in the edit tab. I was lying. So in the edit tab, there is this option here to delete guides, and then all of your guides will go away in there. One of the last things we'll do then is we're going to make our slide, and we'll do that kind of in a similar way that we made our stairs a little bit. So on this other side or final side of our playground, let's create another rectangle. So keyboard shortcut R, and just place it on our face here. And then we'll use push-pull, keyboard shortcut P, and we'll bring it out, let's say 6 feet. And then we'll orbit around to the bottom and we'll bring it down to the base of our pillars in there. We're going to create a two-point arc from a little bit further down of our slide to this corner. So again, that is this option right here. And I'll create that arc from a little bit further. Is that not it? I might have been making the wrong one. Nope, I was. 2-point arc. Excuse me. So that's weird that it's bringing out a protractor. From sure where it intersects there to the bottom, and then I'll pull it down in amount. I'll use the move tool then to make a copy of it to that top corner. So move, click on it, tap the control key, or excuse me, let's hit the space bar a trillion times. When I go to move, I want to move it based on this corner, tap the control key to the top, and then, oh, great accidental thing that happened though, because once we orbit it around, we can see that this actually isn't flat on this face at all. So let's click on one and hit the delete key, click on the other, hit the delete key. So let's try again with our 2-point arc. I'm going to put it on the edge of my face here. And then I want it to be flat on this face. So I'm looking for some feedback that I'm flat on that face, and I can even orbit around now and verify that I am. I thought it was looking a little strange, but I thought maybe it was just the perspective. I'll hit the space bar to get back into the selection tool. I'm going to use copy, so keyboard shortcut M. I'm going to grab it by that endpoint, tap the control key, move it to the top of my group here, and then I'm going to use push-pull to pull the top part of my slide away, as well as the bottom part of my slide. And you may have to orbit around to the other side to be able to click on that face for that inference or instance. We'll hit the space bar and then triple click on our slide so we can make it into a group as well. Lastly, or second to last, I guess lastly, we would be saving our slide here, our project. But lastly, we're going to add colors to our object in here. So we can also adjust our styles here, but since we don't have much colors in here, we're not going to see a lot with our style toolbar. But we'll put it just back in kind of regular mode, in shaded mode, and we'll turn edges off. So to add colors to your object is going to be keyboard shortcut B for the paint bucket tool, or this tool here. And you really can put in sort of any color you'd like. There's lots of different colors available. And so I'm just going to make, my slide one color. I kind of want to make this menu a little larger. So I wonder if I make my entity smaller. Let me make this bigger. There we go. Make that a different color. And so we can kind of add different colors to our various objects. Do red platform. Let's do yellow pillars. There we go. Another thing we can do in SketchUp that's really cool, and we'll do a little bit more later when we do some rendering features, is we can also do some shadow analysis in there. So within the Windows tool here, We should be able to. It's weird that it's not in there. It should be in there. All right, they may have moved it, but I think I found it. In the View tab, we can turn shadows on or off. And then within our tray here, we can even play around with those shadows of where our shadow is going to be located based on our time of day, as well as then the specific date within the year in there. And then further, we can even do a lot more shadow analysis within a building by putting a geolocation to our building, so that way we can get a lot more accurate shadows. Our final step for this assignment would be to save our work. So that would be in File, Save As. You'll want to make sure that you're saving as a SketchUp model, which is an SKP. Please keep in mind too that SketchUp will often make a backup, which is an SKB. And you want to make sure that you are submitting your SKP files when you go to submit work in there. So I'm going to go save my work. In my case, I'm going to go into my Google Drive. You might be saving up here into a flash drive, but I'm going to put mine in my Google Drive here. I'll put it in my BIM folder, and you're going to want to name it BSC 1210. Your last name in all caps, your first name lowercase, dash, SketchUp, I believe intro. Yeah, let's do SketchUp intro. And then save.